Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Vetsuipens. I am a professor of finance at the Cox School of Business and also the academic director of our FSE seminar, or Financial Skills for the Energy Industry. Today, I'd like to take some of your time to explain to you a little bit how attending this seminar might help you. As you probably know, the oil business is a very unique one, and it faces some unique challenges. The oil industry is a very capital-intensive business, one where lots of monies are spent routinely by oil companies each year to organize production, refining, and distribution. On top of that, we are subject to the vagaries of world markets. Our oil prices can be high one year, they can be low another year, and so dealing with that aspect of risk is another unique challenge. Of course, the oil business is technologically very complex, and because many things can go wrong if we're not careful, we employ a lot of highly skilled technical specialists, geoscientists, reservoir engineers, production, drilling experts, transportation, refining specialists, and not to mention people in IT, land, legal, HR, marketing, and other specialties. If you think about the typical career path in an oil and gas company, you will recognize that when you yourself were hired at the company you first worked for, you were brought in for your technical skills. You were brought in as a specialist, and you were a non-management professional worker. However, over time, as you prove yourself, you might have been promoted to levels of middle or perhaps higher management. And when that happens, your purely technical specialty skills are no longer as relevant. You really are asking other questions. You are managing other processes. You have become a generalist. Someone did a study of what kind of language people use at different levels in an organization. And this study found that at lower levels of management, people used to speak mostly in technical terms and a little bit in financial and business terms. At middle levels of management, however, the proportions were roughly equal. And at top levels, most of the conversation was of a financial nature. The typical attendee to our financial seminars here at SMU tend to be in the middle management group. And a colleague of mine referred that kind of people as hinge managers, people in a hinge position. A hinge is, of course, a piece of metal that connects the door to the frame that surrounds it. And the metaphor means that if you're a hinge manager, you connect two worlds. The people who report to you using mostly technical languages. But when you aggregate that information and report to your superior, the language is probably financial. So you need to be bilingual. You still need to know the technical stuff, but you need to translate all of that into financial words. And that is a challenge. The kind of questions that we asked of management in the past have changed. It used to be in the past that we were interested in knowing how successful your reserve replenishment effort was, how successful your production was, how much oil and gas throughput did you generate. That's still important today, of course, but now other questions arise. Now you're also likely to be asked about your profits, perhaps your cash flow. Maybe someone will ask why the stock price of the company isn't doing well. Someone else might worry about leverage and banks' attitude toward the company. The rating perhaps might have been downgraded. And at some point, someone will ask perhaps about return on investments and things like that. And all those things are confusing to the non-finance trained person. If I may use a metaphor used by Mark Twain once, Mark Twain once said about the weather, "Oh, everybody's talking about it, but no one's doing anything about it." Well, you might say the same thing about value creation, the word of choice these days in corporate management. Everyone's talking about pursuing value creation as a corporate objective. But what exactly is meant by value creation? Is it, for example, the same as maximizing profits? And if so, what kind of profits are we maximizing? Net profits, operating profits, perhaps profits or earnings per share? Is it going to be short-run profits, long-run profits? And is profit the same thing as cash flow? Well, these are complex questions, of course. This graph is the kind of structure we use in our seminar to answer that question. Profits are not the same as cash flow. And if you think of the company and its operation the same way as your capital providers do, you look at the world horizontally. You look at cash spent today, and you hope to earn more than enough cash in the future to more than make up the amounts invested up front. So today and tomorrow, the future and the risk, these are the dimensions of financial management. And your capital providers expect you to manage the process in such a way as to create value. In other words, the future cash flows ought to be worth a lot more than the value spent today in upfront expenditures. To illustrate how important finance has become to oil and gas firms, consider the following very powerful statement provided to us by one of our corporate clients. He said recently, "When oil was over $100 a barrel, nobody in the firm needed to know about financial management. But now with oil at $50 a barrel instead, everybody in the firm needs to know about finance." This great insight really explains in a nutshell what happened to our industry over the last 40 or 50 years. In the past, financial metrics have received a lot less attention in oil and gas firms. It used to be production growth targets or reserve growth targets that mattered. And increasing production, replenishing reserves, was a very legitimate corporate objective as long as oil prices kept rising. But when oil prices stopped rising, creating reserves at almost any cost stopped making economic sense. And in the 80s, our industry was unwilling to recognize that hard reality of lower oil prices. As a result of the industry's lesser focus on financial metrics, it destroyed considerable value in the pursuit of acreage and reserve and production growth. And as a result, the industry stock prices languished and firms had to restructure, sometimes under duress, to avoid wasting corporate funds in ill-advised upstream investments. These days, as a result of this painful experience in the 80s, the energy is much more accustomed to considering and pursuing financial metrics. One might even say that today the energy industry is embracing the value imperative. The value imperative means that we should not only do the things that we do right, but that we should be doing the right things. Capital allocation needs to be efficient. In other words, while we can do many projects, we should only do probably some of them. And so how do we know how to pick from among the feasible projects those that fulfill our value creation objective? That is the central focus of our seminar. If you look at who occupies the top executive suite in your company, the people who form part of your leadership team, look at whether they themselves have any financial training. And if they have financial training, that is probably a subtle hint that excellence in financial management is very much rewarded in the company, and developing financial acumen can only help your career. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you decide to attend our FSE seminar, what can we promise? Well, the seminar only lasts 3.5 days, and obviously it is not going to be possible to become a financial expert in a short amount of time. But in 3.5 days, it is possible to learn the basic financial concepts and to understand how decisions in financial areas relate to a broader context, that of your capital providers. So that's exactly what we'll try and do. We will attempt to improve your financial knowledge, give you some valuable financial analysis skills, and help you develop an appreciation of how the day-to-day operational things you may be doing at the company ultimately contribute to the overall financial value imperative. An added benefit is that now you'll be able to speak a little bit the language of finance, and so your financial colleagues will no longer be able to ignore you because you speak their language. The FSC seminar consists of the following 5 components. First and foremost, we will talk about financial strategy. What is the process of value creation? What is meant by cash flows? What is meant by earning a superior return on capital? Those are the key concepts that allow us to understand how projects should be evaluated. Of course, we operate in a risky commodity-based industry, so understanding how the broader energy markets function and how energy companies can use financial tools to manage energy risks will also be addressed. Finally, financial decisions rely to a great degree on knowledge of accounting data, so understanding what financial statements mean will also be covered in some detail in this program. The FSC seminar is an interesting place for you to reflect, to think more broadly about some issues that affect your career and your company and its place in the industry in a way that is neutral and supportive. Feel free to bring any questions to us that you might have had of a financial nature about your company and its place in the industry but didn't understand before. We will try to answer them. Your boss isn't here, so your questions will remain completely anonymous. What happens at SMU stays at SMU, they say, right? Also, you will be escaping for the next 3.5 days that you stay with us the day-to-day distractions of emails and phone calls from your colleagues, superiors, and subordinates. So you'll devote the full day to learning a new set of things that will be wonderfully enriching. This is truly a rare opportunity in a manager's life. You will notice that we do not use textbooks if you come here. We use cases. We do so because cases are practical and applied, whereas textbooks are a little bit theoretical and generic in nature. Our class materials are often focused on the experiences of individual oil and gas companies, some of which you may recognize, some of which you may know about, some of which you may have worked for. So the material is highly relevant, and as a result, it's a lot more fun. And you as a participant will no longer be just a passive absorber of material, but you'll be actively participating in the discussion. Indeed, cases allow us to build on everybody's strengths, draw out people's experiences, and we'll arrive to a more rich conclusion than otherwise would be the case. We learn by involvement. That's what cases do. Lastly, if you come to Dallas to attend our seminar, if you look around the room, you'll see that around you are sitting people with a lot of experience. Your colleagues will represent a broad range of companies, cultures, and disciplines within oil and gas firms. You will get to know your classmates reasonably well during these 3.5 days. And in fact, a lot of valuable learning will take place outside of the formal confines of the classroom, in study groups, at dinners, at the hotel before and after the day. So I'd like to say that you, the participant, are one of the strengths of the seminar. And we hope to see you on our campus very soon for one of our FSC seminars. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.